I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trustee Nazarian, would you give the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, I would. We would like to recognize the Seneca Nation on whose ancestral territory we are gathering. The present-day village of Fairport sits on traditional Seneca land. The Seneca Nation, with the Mohawk, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Tuscarora, make up the sovereign Haudenosaunee Confederacy. With respect, we acknowledge the people of the Seneca Nation on whose land we now live. We honor their past, present, and future contributions to and stewardship of this land.
Great, thank you. Megan, would you take roll call, please?
Trustee Briggs?
Here.
Trustee Bonoski?
Here.
Trustee Wojda?
Hello.
Trustee Nazarian?
Here.
Mayor Domerantz?
Here.
And our 2 student advisors.
Here. Here.
So, for some reason today, it must be because it's cold outside, our microphones are really super sensitive. That's why I keep pushing mine away. I'm used to having it close. So if you can try and remember to turn your mic off if you're not talking, because for some reason we're getting a little feedback tonight. I want to introduce our guests tonight. We have Jill Wiedrick, our village planner, with us, and we also have a couple scouts in our audience who are working on some badges. So welcome and thank you for being here. We're happy that you joined us tonight. Okay, with that, we're going to start off with Citizens Forum before anybody comes up. There were 3 sheets over on the table on the side. One was for Citizens Forum. One is for local law number 1 and the public hearing that will happen for that tonight. The other one is for local law number 2 and the public hearing that is for that one tonight. And before anyone comes up and joins us, I'll just give a brief overview of the guidelines for public comment. The public may speak only during the meeting citizens forum or the public hearings. Speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer. Speakers should step up to the front of the room to the microphone and state your name and your address. We ask that speakers limit their time to 5 minutes and that you cannot yield your time remaining to another speaker. Board members may, with the permission of the mayor or the presiding officer, interrupt a speaker during their remarks, but only for the purpose of clarification or information. If someone has a letter that needs to go in the record, we're not reading any letters from anybody else. You can state your own comments, but any letters should be given to Megan, our clerk treasurer, and she will add them to the record. Speakers must observe the commonly accepted rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste. And again, interested parties or the representatives may address the board with written communications. You can give those to Megan. And please no applause or intimidation, anything like that. We are just allowing everybody to have an opportunity to speak to the board. So with that, I will start Citizens Forum. If there's anybody here who is planning to speak during Citizens Forum, did you have anybody signed up on the list?
I have 2 people. The first one is Elizabeth King.
Great.
Hello? No.
Yep. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth King and I live at 94 Potter Place. On Monday, January 5th at approximately 7 a.m., a child who resides on Dewey Avenue was riding their bicycle to school at Minerva DeLand. While attempting to cross Halvard Avenue, this child was struck by an automobile hard enough to knock them down. I was returning home from walking my dog and witnessed it firsthand. As you may be aware, my house is located on the corner of Potter Place and Halvard Avenue, directly across from both Minerva and Johanna Parent. And every day, no matter the time of day, I can look out my front window and watch drivers run the stop sign at that intersection in a permanent school zone from every direction. This issue is particularly frustrating given where it's located and the number of joggers, cyclists, children, and adults who cross that intersection, but it's not happening in a vacuum. Everywhere in this village, personal vehicle drivers exceed the speed limit, run stop signs and red lights, and drive aggressively or inattentively around cyclists and pedestrians. I know I am not the first and will not be the last resident to bring these concerns to the board. In 2023, a group of residents just over the hill from me expressed concern in forceful letters and with a petition signed by nearly 50 residents about pedestrian safety crossing South Main Street at Hulbert Avenue. And yet, only milquetoast measures have been taken to curb speeds and hold drivers accountable. When stop sign and speed ticketing cameras exist and are easily obtainable, we instead use frowny faces and ignorable speed indicators, beg buttons, and facile encouragements to pedestrians and cyclists to wear reflective clothing and be visible. 5 years ago, the report, Village of Fairport Economic Development Study, prepared by Urban Advisors, Highland Planning, and SWBR, commissioned by the Fairport Office of Community and Economic Development, identified numerous ways in which Fairport could improve infrastructure to make the village both a better destination for tourism and a place that people want to live long-term. Quote, streetscape. Enhance the public realm and complete nature of Main Street with pedestrian improvements, bikeways, street trees, amenities, safety, reducing curb cuts, infill development, etc. End quote. In a memo attached to the report, one of the major threats the village needed to address was Route 250 hurts walkability. Among the weaknesses was Route 250/31 through traffic. And it seemed for a while that Fairport was listening. A revamp of Lift Bridge Lane East was planned that would incorporate protected bike lanes for all the canal cyclists funneled off of the canal trail in the name of pedestrian safety and making that part of the trail business friendly. It would add a median that would slow traffic flow and reduce on-street parking, which is a safety concern for both cyclists and pedestrians. Unfortunately, those changes did not pan out. Then came the Main Street Streetscape project, an opportunity to really enhance safety and make it clear that Main Street belonged to everyone, not just the people using it to get from Webster to Victor. We could have had raised crosswalks, which would force vehicles to slow down and yield to pedestrians. We could have turned the clutter of on-street parking into bike lanes. Instead, we got bag buttons and white painted bikes in lane. The most aggressive harassment I've ever received while cycling has come from automobile drivers on Main Street and Church Street while using the driving lanes as the law mandates. This is not safe and it is not a solution. I get that change doesn't happen overnight and that there are use limits for certain state and federal funding grants. But change definitely doesn't happen if you don't even try. And I'll be honest with you, in the 14 plus years I've lived in Fairport, the only time I felt safe crossing Main Street was when the lift bridge was closed and there were effectively no cars on it. Last summer, my husband and I, along with another couple, were nearly hit crossing Main Street from the farmer's market when a personal vehicle turned right out of the landing parking lot so close, I left a boot print on their rear passenger door. They did not stop or even acknowledge the danger in which they put us. I'm not here only to offer gripes, though I do feel that I am, along with so many of my neighbors, justified in voicing them. I do want to urge the village to hold automobile drivers accountable for their bad behavior in a tangible and consistent manner. We've seen, in so many ways, what results from a failure to check bad actors. But I also have a proposal that will benefit Main Street businesses, considered by many to be the beating heart of Fairport, as well as cyclists and pedestrians. I'd like you, the board, and mayor to consider, from May to September of this year, a pilot program whereby Main Street, from 31 up to the railroad tracks, is closed to personal vehicle traffic on the weekends. Nearly all parking lots in that corridor have access from side streets, and the few that don't could become sites for community gathering spaces. It's been shown time and again by case studies and reports that increased foot traffic increases small business spending. Walkers and cyclists are more likely to notice businesses they wouldn't see from a car and more likely to stop to browse. The farmers market is an overwhelming success every year, and wouldn't it be great if patrons felt safe enough to check out other businesses in the area that are just a quick walk away? We spent a lot of money putting in new sidewalks and trees on Main Street. Let's give people a chance to actually enjoy them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, was there another one?
Margaret Frank, 44 Park Circle Drive.
Hello, I'm Margaret Frank, 44 Parksicle Drive. Just to kind of go on, I was a crossing guard for 17 years, at that corner that you're talking about, I also have grandchildren that walk across Hulbert and 250. Many times I almost got hit. Many times right now, the current, I don't work for the, I'm not a crossing guard anymore. Many times, the crossing guards that I know, personal friends of mine, they've almost gotten hit this year. So it's pretty scary. And someday a child's gonna get hit, or a crossing guard. So now mine. I'm very interested to hear the discussion of item number 5 regarding the amount of $650,000 to be transformed from the general fund to the electric fund. That's item number 5 in new business. In the agenda for tonight's meeting on page 19 to 23, the Village of Fairport Downtown Revitalization Initiative public projects were listed. I did not see an agenda item that the projects were going to be discussed. I also wasn't aware that the money had been appropriated yet. People seeing those projects on the agenda might assume the projects have been approved. Just a general comment. Also, my third item is at the January 12th Village Board meeting during the Citizens Forum, Mayor Joe Moretz indicated there was a formal statement submitted by Gabriel McNaughton that would be included in the minutes but not be read. His statement is in the agenda today, Appendix 1, under the January 12th meeting notes. I noticed that he asked it to be read at the January 12th meeting, which it was not. I'm trying to understand why an email could not be read during Citizens Forum when it is often said you are transparent. Not reading a resident's email when it was requested to do so does not seem transparent to me. Thank you.
Thanks. Was there anybody else for Citizens Forum? Okay, that will close Citizens Forum at 6:14, and we will move on to public hearing number 1, which is local law number 1 of 2026 to override the tax levy limit established in General Municipal Law Section 3-C. Was there anybody signed up for local law number 1?
There's no one on the list.
Okay. So hearing no comments signed up for that, that will close that particular public hearing, and it's, we'll call it 6:14 again. That will take us to local law number 2 of 2026 to enact a new village zoning code and zoning map and amend, repeal certain chapters of the code of the Village of Fairport. And we'll open that public hearing at 6:15. Move arm, I think it stopped right there. Do you have someone signed up on that list?
The first person on the list is Gabe McNaughton, 20 South Avenue.
Okay,
And I have handouts as always.
okay. Thank you.
Well, there it goes. Good evening, Gabe McNaughton, 20 South Ave. I want to thank Joe Weidrich, the zoning working group, and everybody else who has spent the past couple of years developing this character-based code. As a village resident, business owner, and community contributor, planning for Fairport's future is very important to me. I support the goals behind this update. I think modernizing our code is important, and it's going to set us up for success in the future. My comments tonight are about how the board gets to the finish line, and not about whether it should get to the finish line. So first, what we are considering tonight is the repeal and replacement of an entire zoning code, the zoning map for the Village of Fairport. This is one of the most consequential decisions that this board will make. I'd like to tell you what some other communities in our region have done when they faced a similar decision. The town of Victor prepared a generic environmental impact statement for its 2015 comprehensive plan. That GEIS analyzed transportation, open space, and community character before the town moved forward with zoning changes. the town of Penfield prepared a GEIS for its 2010 comprehensive plan, completed a final GEIS in 2011, and subsequently adopted a finding statement. That process led to the complete rewrite of Penfield's zoning code in 2015. The town of Pittsford prepared its 1995 comprehensive plan as part of an overall GEIS, that's the generic environmental impact statement, which informed its zoning code amendments in 2012 and again just this last year in 2025. And currently, the city of Rochester is preparing a GEIS for its zoning code or zoning alignment project, which updates Rochester's zoning code to implement the Rochester Comprehensive Plan. That is the same type of action that's on the agenda tonight for Fairport. Now, Fairport itself recognized that in the 2021 Comprehensive Plan, which is what we're basing our new CBC on, that plan was a type 1 action under SECRA and issued a negative declaration rather than completing a GEIS like our neighbors. That decision deferred the environmental questions to a future date. Tonight is that date. The zoning code update before you is the implementation of that plan, and the cumulative impacts the board chose not to study in 2021 are the same ones that this code will set in motion. 4 communities in our immediate region, same type of action, and every one of them prepared or is preparing a generic environmental impact statement that is not anti-development, that is the standard. My second point, a GEIS is good governance and not an obstacle. It's not a roadblock, it's a planning tool. It identifies the cumulative impacts before increased density arrives, establishes environmental baselines, and puts mitigation measures on the record. I got it out. Just as important, a GEIS creates a framework for development. Once the GEIS is complete, future individual projects can build off of it. That means faster approvals for development, less paperwork, and fewer disputes for every applicant who tries to build and develop in the village. Victor, Penfield, and Pittsford all benefit from this today, and their GEIS investments continue to pay dividends. A GEIS does not slow growth, it accelerates it, because it gives developers, boards, and neighbors a shared factual foundation to work from. Beyond the environmental review question, the final agenda and secret packet were released Friday, February 6th, 3 days ago. Written comments were due today by noon. That's a very tight window for review of a document that will govern land use in Fairport for decades. Taking a few more weeks is not going to kill this project. It's risk management for the growth of Fairport in the future. It gives each of you time to review the full record and gives the public a meaningful opportunity to be heard. That protects the board's decision from being second-guessed down the road. So here's what I am respectfully asking the board to consider tonight. My primary request is to continue the public hearing and keep the record open for written comments for 2 to 4 weeks. Schedule a work session where the board walks through the EAF, the negative declaration of reasoning, and the zoning map changes on the record. Use that time to evaluate whether a generic environmental impact statement is the appropriate level of review for a village-wide rezoning, just as Victor, Penfield, and Pittsford, and the city of Rochester concluded it was for theirs. If that feels like too much, table the negative declaration and local law 2 adoption votes to the next regular meeting, so trustees and the public can review the full final packet and public comments before voting. Either path keeps the project on track. Neither path puts the code update at risk. Both paths protect this board and this village. You've put years of work into this. Every one of the communities I mentioned tonight put years of work in as well. And they invested a few more months to get the environmental review right. I'd ask you to take the time and finish the project the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. Do we have someone else on the list, Megan?
Ginny Mayer, 51 Dewey Ave.
Good evening, Jenny.
Yeah, I'm Jenny Mayer, 51 Dewey Avenue. I support the new zoning code, and I'm happy that the village has taken on this task and made changes that are consistent with working toward a sustainable future. As you know, it's absolutely essential that we stop burning fossil fuels as soon as possible if we want to preserve a livable planet for future generations. The rules about how we are allowed to live here in Fairport and everywhere else in the country must change to help us do this. The new zoning code changes these rules in the right direction. I'm glad for that, and I urge you to vote yes on these changes when that vote comes up. As I've done at previous meetings, I will continue to advocate that you go farther in the direction of sustainability in the zoning code. We need to give residents in all areas of the village the opportunity to build multifamily units, not just ADUs, but duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. This freedom would provide an opportunity to gradually, organically begin to allow a wide range of housing choices. It will also improve the sustainability of our community by allowing more people to take advantage of close proximity to businesses, the bus line, and bike trails, and thus reduce their overall car use. As you've advised in the last few days, we are bracing ourselves for high electric bills in January and February. And I know people are nervous about how freeing ourselves from dependence on fossil fuels by electrifying their heat and transportation will affect our electricity rates in the future. One thing we can do to make it less expensive is to make these zoning changes. Allowing multifamily buildings greatly reduces overall energy needs per household. Shared walls reduce heat loss from each unit. Shared common indoor spaces spread energy use across multiple households, and common garages can provide opportunities for car sharing. Thank you again for taking the first steps toward a more sustainable zoning code. I hope you will continue this momentum into the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Kate Myers Emery, 19 South Ave.
Hi. I have to admit I am tired that I have to be up here again, mainly because I wish I was at my son's hockey game right now instead of here, even though it would be like -4 there. But I truly believed that we had settled these arguments last year. You said you would not sell the community out to investors. You said you would protect the look and the feel of Fairport, a place that people really care about, and not turn it into a place that people cash in on. And yet, here we are. I'm tired of the lack of transparency. I'm tired of being told that I was heard, only to discover that that listening was treated like a checkbox and not a commitment. Listening doesn't count if the outcomes don't actually truly change. You asked for our trust. You were elected because we gave that trust to you. And trust is built when words matter after the meeting ends. Please don't let this desire to win this override the responsibility to lead. And please actually listen to the people who live here. I want affordable housing. I want to live in a diverse, thriving community. I live in a neighborhood that has lots of different types of housing, that has an Airbnb, that has apartments, and it's wonderful. I want my children to be able to live here one day. I want them to afford a house. Like, we barely were able to get a house. I want them to be able to do that and not have to make, millions of dollars. But let's be honest, Fairport is not going to solve what is a national housing crisis. What the zoning code will do is invite investors who are already hollowing out communities across the United States. It will make homes more profitable, not more attainable. And once that door is open, it will not close quietly. Years from now, no one's going to remember the arguments in this room, what people said, but they are going to remember whether you protected Fairport or not. But I shouldn't be reminding you about this because we already talked about it and it was already said that we wouldn't do that. And there are enormous challenges facing our country right now. Real ones, urgent ones. I want to be spending my energy on those because that is the big problem right now. I shouldn't be worried about what's happening in Fairport because there are so many bigger things happening this moment and I want to give my energy to those. I don't want to be stuck in meetings like this again. I'm sure nobody wants to be doing zoning code again when we could be talking about the bigger challenges that actually matter right now. So let's do something different. Cut the village-wide ADUs, 4-story buildings. Let's pass the parts of this code that genuinely need to be updated and will make the village better. And let's refocus on what actually matters. Because more than anything, people need hope right now. Hope that their voices matter. Hope that promises mean something. Hope that at least here in Fairport at the local level, the government does work for its people. I need to believe that our community is looking out for us. Show us the governments can listen, that they can step outside of agendas for the good of people. Be the leaders who brought Fairport together when it would have been easier to just push forward divided. Be the leaders who listened and chose transparency when we are desperately looking for trust and truth. Give us hope here in Fairport. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have someone else?
Wendy Mason, 4 Clifford Street.
Hello, Wendy Mason, 4 Clifford Street.
Welcome.
Thank you. My husband and I, before we were married, we moved here 17 years ago. And we picked Fairport because we loved the neighborhood. We loved the area. We drove around. We visited a whole bunch of areas in the area. We were from Boston before that. And we moved here because we were attracted to this place. And I'm sure most of us moved here or are still here because we were attracted to this place. That's not in my little thing. It's just me thinking about why I'm here. Okay, so let me get started. Like many in the village, I've been on the outskirts of local governance. I've been disillusioned, voting for the people on their word. The word of transparency, the word of listening to those that they represent, and the belief that the people who run for public offices are the stewards of their constituents, prioritizing collective good over interests, agendas, personal ideologies, or trending philosophies. This is what is expected. To my disappointment, that's not what's been happening. More and more of us have become aware of this through this zoning initiative that ended where it began, without consideration for the plethora of input from us. Why conduct a survey, even if it's a poorly designed and screams surveyor bias, if not to actively listen to the individuals being surveyed? Is it to check a box of citizen input? Showing people pretty facades to lure attention away from the hugely impactful nuts and bolts of rezoning. I've spoken to villagers spanning the political ideologies and can tell you that people are fumed across the board. I believe that you know that already. Villagers who have already felt the impact of short-term rentals. Villagers who came here to get away from the yes in my backyard zoning. Villagers who see the big picture and understand the consequences of today's decisions, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years down the road. It isn't rainbows and butterflies that the ultra-liberal movement develops in echo chambers. I'm just one of tons of me's in this village. Residents and business owners who span the political landscape, we aren't the exception, we are the norm. If you spent as much time as I do listening to my neighbors and my friends, and the residents, I know that you know this. Today, whether or not you decide to do right by your constituents, you'll be answering to them tomorrow. So that when a neighbor's basement floods with sewage because an unassuming Airbnb tenant flushed baby wipes into our crumbling sewage lines, they'll know who to blame. When their quaint side street becomes flooded with parked cars and neighborhood kiddos no longer feel safe to just go in the street and toss the ball, they'll know who to blame. When we become that village, with boats, trailers, and RVs littering driveways because of self-interested politicians and enablers, we will know who to blame. You see, we see you. We see the lack of respect for your constituents. The we know better than the attitudes. We see the market radicalism groupthink that excludes the thoughts, desires, and common sense concerns of the vast majority of village residents. The people you are supposed to represent. We see the pressures of conformity laughing in the face of the democratic process. In meeting like today's, it is in meeting like today's that either builds trust or is responsible for people's loss of faith in our institutions. Each of your decisions today will dictate how many of us need to become active in protecting our local democracy to ensure that the local government works for the stakeholders that make this village what it is. Homeowners, business owners, public service personnel, and our volunteers. And as a side note, and a close, if you think it's okay to increase the cap on village taxes while screaming about affordability, the hypocrisy will just add a whole nother base of constituents actively involving themselves in all of our business. Not because they want to, because your actions will demand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Do you have anybody else on the list, Megan?
Connie Murphy, 3 Manor Hill Drive.
Welcome, Connie.
Hi. Do the timer. I have to take this off. Test.
Okay, Connie Murphy, I'm with 3 Manor Hill Drive. I'm here tonight, these words keep coming up. I was tired and disappointed. I've spent months studying this code, attending every workshop, writing detailed letters, not for my health, but because I care about the future of Fairport. But throughout this entire process, I and many of my neighbors feel abandoned by our government. I watched you nod politely in workshops while residents raised valid concerns, only to wait for us to stop talking so you could move on with your own objectives. You were just going through the motions. The December 8th hearing, the last public hearing, remember? It was legally invalid. You forced the public to comment on a 229-page document. That was a moving target, circulating 4 different versions of the code that didn't match the clerk's records. Even after that failed hearing, you swapped the files 3 more times. I have screenshots of every bait and switch. You finally aligned the website with the legal version just in time for tonight, so congratulations on finally following the bare minimum of the law. This isn't a mistake, it's a betrayal of the democratic process. We trusted you to lead with competence. Instead, you have led us through a legal process wrought with errors and conflicts of interest. You have bent the rules to the absolute limit. Look at the ethical record. Trustee Banofsky was hired by the firm writing this code in May of '25.
Yet the conflict was hidden for 5 months until my formal complaint forced a disclosure. Even worse, he was personally approving his employer's invoices. A move that's not just unethical, it's illegal under New York law. You claim that the contract was awarded in 2024, but the actual drafting didn't start until 2 months after he was on their payroll. If there was nothing to hide, why was this kept from the public and 2 members of the board? This isn't just a conflict, it's a violation that renders the entire process legally void. Likewise, we see Trustee Woika pushing for specific RV language tailored for her own benefit and her convenience. And this language was introduced after the public engagement period ended. There were no requests of this language from any citizen of Fairport during the public engagement period. So I just have to ask, when did this board stop serving the public and start serving itself? I must ask myself, is this a matter of gross incompetence, or is it something more malicious? Is it that you don't know the rules, or is it that you just don't care about them because it gets in the way of what you want? Honestly, looking at this mess, I see both. By ignoring these conflicts and procedural failures, you aren't just acting underhandedly. You're creating a legally defensive Article 78 claim. You are handing a judge the evidence to rule this code arbitrary and capricious and declare it null and void. In doing so, you are gambling with our $10 million DRI grant because the state does not fund projects built on a foundation of ethical violations and illegal procedures. And it isn't just the DRI grant. You are using federal money from the Genesee Transportation Council for this project. Money that came with a mandate for transportation planning and strict public engagement. By delivering a code that lacks transportation substance, we can talk about all bike lanes, it's not in there, walkability, you are essentially asking the taxpayers of Fairport to foot the bill for your legal errors when the federal government comes looking for their money. This isn't just a debacle, it's a massive financial liability. And I want to be very clear. The next 2 years are election years. The citizens of Fairport are paying attention. We are documenting the lack of transparency and the way you've sidelined the taxpayers. We love Fairport, but we hate the way the majority of this board is conducting themselves. You have a choice tonight. You can continue down this path of arrogance and unaccountability, or you can do the right thing by stopping this vote and incorporating resident feedback, which, by the way, the 4 pages of changes from Jill are strictly ministerial and only add Heidi's RV language, which doesn't even say what the language is, it just says adding RV language per the board. You can stop and you can show us that you work for us, the citizens. So fix the code, respect the process, or the voters will find people who will. Do not pass this code today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kara Myers,
Go ahead.
Kara Myers, 33 Dewey Ave.
No? Okay, Kara's not going to speak.
Al Bartolotta, 3 Manor Hill Drive.
Hello.
Welcome.
So, like a lot of people here, I'm a little tired. I think we've had this discussion pretty often, but again, like my neighbors, I feel like we are not being heard. So you're all about to pass a zoning code. That's not what the people asked for based on the results of your own public outreach efforts. So the question I have is, who are you working for? We didn't ask for the allowance of 4-story, 55-foot buildings up and down Main Street, but that's what your code gives us. Who are you working for? We didn't ask for the allowance of ADUs on every residential lot in the village with no owner occupation requirements, but that's what your code gives us. So who are you working for? We didn't ask for the allowance of RV and boat storage in front of every house in the village, but that's what your code gives us. So who are you working for? We didn't ask Trustee Woika to put her personal interest above the people she is entrusted to serve, as she did by inserting the aforementioned RV boat
I'm
storage.
going to stop you there for a second, because in our policy and our process, you are to address the entire board. I should have stated it during the last comments. These are comments for the board, not to attack individual people.
I will take the name out. We didn't ask one of our trustees to put her personal interest above the people she is entrusted to serve.
Again, I'm going to ask you to
name.
direct your comments to the entire board and not to direct them at individuals on the board, whether you say their name or not.
It's not being directed to an individual. That's a comment for the whole board. And I'm just commenting on a particular trustee. I'm not indicating what the name is. If you would like to say, I could say the majority of the board.
That's fine.
Okay, we didn't ask for the majority of the board to put someone's personal interest above the people they are entrusted to serve, as they did by inserting the aforementioned RV boat storage provisions into the new code, but that's what you did. Who are you working for? We did not ask the majority of the board. We did ask the majority of the board to have an individual recuse himself due to a conflict of interest, but that was refused. Like another trustee, this was a situation where an individual put their personal interest above the interests of those they are elected to serve. Just to be clear regarding this conflict of interest, it's pretty clear in the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government that even the appearance of a conflict is indeed a conflict. As citizens of the village of Fairport, we expect our government to consider and evaluate the impacts of their decision. On a zoning code change of such wide scale impact that we have here, it's really irresponsible that there was never an impact assessment done on the zoning code at all. No assessment of what the impacts are going to be in terms of transportation, energy supply, nothing. I've heard before in here, I know you like to celebrate about all the composting activity going on in the village, and I think most of you consider yourself to be environmentally friendly, but yet at the same time you're advancing a code that brings us more cars, more pavement, more CO2 emissions, and more energy demand. A code that also places additional demand on our fire and police departments. That's not environmentally friendly or sustainable. So I have no problem encouraging multifamily development in locations where it makes sense. Our community needs multifamily among its housing mix. But any efforts to incentivize it need to be vetted through and sanctioned by the public, because it is their vision, rather than your own, that should be driving your decisions. If the will of the public does not align with your desired policy, then it is really on you to educate and convince them through data, analysis, and findings of fact that your plans will indeed advance their interests. Otherwise, they need to be retooled or shelved. Meaningful public engagement is not measured in the number of workshops you host, or the number of likes you get on social media, or the number of times you appear on a radio show or podcast. Meaningful public engagement is measured by the extent to which your policies and decisions reflect the priorities of the people you serve. Otherwise, your public engagement activities are nothing more than window dressing. I'm going to leave you with a quote. Jane Jacobs wrote a seminal book about urban planning. It's called The Death and Life of Great American Cities. She was a huge proponent of community-driven planning. She said the people make the city, and it is to them, not buildings, that we must fit our plans. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else, Megan?
Lilith and Jessica Verwoost. Nope, okay. Nathan and Leah Balcony.
That's fine.
Margaret Frank, 44 Park Circle Drive.
I'm shorter. Margaret Frank, 22, 44 Park Circle Drive. On December 8th, there was a public hearing for the zoning code update held in the Village Hall, which was well attended. Great to see so many people on December 8th in attendance and speaking that night and hearing comments from those who were unable to attend. At that public hearing, 16 people shared their comments either in person, 10, or by proxy, 6. Of those proxy statements, 3 were read by Mayor Domeratz and 3 were read by me. The proxy statements were 37.5% of the comments. As I read the statement below regarding the public hearing for local law number 2 for February 9th, which was on the website on January 14th, I had a question regarding the statement. Quote, if you are unable to attend but would like to submit a comment, please email the comments to Megan by 12 p.m. February 9th. Comments submitted in writing or via email shall be added to the record of the meeting. On February 4th, I sent an email to the mayor, the village trustees, Megan Cook, and Brian White, asking if that meant proxy statements could not be read during the February 9th meeting. The mayor responded to me, quote, yes, Mrs. Frank, you understanding correct. Members of the public may submit letters of public comment, and they will be added to the record. None will be read by board members or by other attendees. On Friday, February 6th, I asked Megan Cook here in the village hall why the proxy statements could not be read, and she told me the rules have been changed. I questioned why proxy statements cannot be read in the public hearing and why the rules were changed. I also questioned why December 8th public hearing recording is not listed in the documents and presentations under local law number 2 of 2026, public hearings scheduled for February 9th, when other public hearings in the past 2 years have been posted in that section. There was some very interesting and valuable information shared during that public hearing. And then I also have the comment from January 14th.
I'm going to correct Megan. That really wasn't a rule change when we discussed it. It's never really been a part of our record, just like we don't cede other people time from someone speaking. So it was just decided that because, for the sake of time, that those comments are still all received by the board. There was never necessarily the intention that people get up and read letter after letter. And I did the same thing, and that's why I said, you're correct. None of the board will be reading letters, and we'll ask the same of the public, because...
It doesn't seem fair.
Okay, well, thank you.
And not transparent.
I have one more.
Okay.
Chris Kyle, 36 Dewey Ave.
Welcome.
Hello, Chris Kyle, 36 Dewey Ave. I, like everyone else who has spoken this evening, have attended many of the meetings, and when I could not attend, I watch when they've been publicized, and I think that a fair statement to make is that more needs to be done in regards to the zoning code. As far as listening to the residents, as far as understanding what people want for the village, I do not think we're there. I do not think that we're bringing us together. I think we are creating more of a division. So I would say tonight that I would oppose the zoning code as it is currently written, and would please ask that you take some more time to really put some thought, get some more reaction from the people of the village, and do the right thing.
Thank you. Any other names on the list? Okay. Then at 6:50, we will close the public hearing for local law number 2. Thanks. Okay, with that, hang on a second. I need a drink of water. Thank you, Megan. That will move us to unfinished business. So let's start with unfinished business, number 1. Can I have a motion by the village board to approve the meeting minutes of January 12th, 2026 village board meeting?
So moved.
By trustee Nazarian,
Second.
by trustee Wake-up, okay. Any questions regarding those meeting minutes? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? That will carry. And then item number 2 is a motion by the village board to approve the meeting minutes from January 30th, 2026 by the village board special meeting.
So moved.
By trustee Wojtka,
Second.
Not there.
by trustee Briggs. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That will carry unanimously as well. Which will take us to item number 1 under the new business, which is a motion by the village board to adopt local law number 1 of 2026 to override the tax levy limit for the fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2026 for the village of Fairport. This local law is deemed to be a type 2 action under 617.5, section C26 of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, seeker. Therefore, no further action is required. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
By trustee Wojtka,
Second.
by trustee Nazarian, and I'm sorry about this feedback. Let's open that up for discussion. This is a local law that we do every year so that should we go over the tax cap, that we are covered. And if we are under the tax cap, if there was any error made in accounting, we can be fined for that as well. So it's basically to cover both sides of the coin there. Any questions?
I think Brian went over that in our last meeting as well. So yeah, I think it covers it.
And why wouldn't we wait to see the budget first and then decide?
Because it takes a cycle of 2 to 3 months for you to go through a local law process. We introduced this in January. It's taking at least 2 months for it to be done in February. We go through the budget in March with immediate approval of the budget. There's not enough time in that cycle, so we just do it every year. There's no harm in doing it. If we don't go over the tax cap, then we just null this, we don't use this local law.
Okay.
Any other concerns? Okay. Megan, did you have any comments that you wanted to add?
Nope, you got it.
Okay.
They do come in and audit the calculation. They've come in here a couple times, so
Okay.
they check it.
All right. You're saying the state, or, yeah, the state comes in and audits the calculation of the tax cap. Okay, so this is a type 2 because this has no impact on the environment. With that, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
That will pass 4 to 1. Okay, moving on to item number 2, a resolution by the Board of Trustees and the Village of Fairport adopting a negative declaration regarding local law number 2 of 2026. The secret documents, we have them right here related to this code, and I'll read the resolution. The resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fairport adopting a negative declaration regarding local law number 2 of 2026, whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fairport, pursuant to proposed local law number 2 of 2026, has determined that it is necessary to update the village zoning code and the official zoning map to address the current and changing needs of the community and to modify or eliminate obsolete or overly complicated requirements and procedures to make code more user-friendly in order to protect the public interest and welfare of its residents and promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the village, the people of the Village of Fairport. The proposed action, and the resolution is now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Board of Trustees as followed. Section 1, the proposed action is classified as a type 1 action under seeker, as that term is defined by 6 New York NYCRR section 617.2 AJ, and each of the whereas clauses in this resolution is incorporated by reference into the specific findings of this resolution and shall have the same effect of the findings herein. There are sections 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which I'm not going to read, but are included in this. And then section 8, the requirements of seeker have been satisfied in this resolution, shall take effect immediately. So that's the resolution that we're talking about. Can I have a motion and a second to introduce this resolution?
So moved. So moved. My mic was on.
That's okay. By trustee Nazarian?
Second.
By trustee, Adam Banoski. Okay, so let's open this up, and Jill, can you go through and give us more details about the seeker document and the resolution?
Sure. So I did print out hard copies for everyone.
Is the power in front of you?
It did not significantly change from the first time that we had the introduction of seeker. So you'll notice that the part 1 is actually, this was first seen in July by the village board. A code update is different than a lot of processes that might occur for seeker. So the code update, you're looking at a very general overview of the code. We're not looking at specific projects. The seeker review is not project-based. So you will oftentimes hear about a seeker review occurring in conjunction with a project proposal. So our land use boards, oftentimes you see that. Most often planning boards see seeker and they go through that process. If you've read through the part 1, it makes clear that when you're doing something that's a legislative action, so this is on page 2 of 13, and I'm specifically...
Are you in this document?
Yep, on part 1.
Okay.
I'm specifically referring to C1. And if you respond yes to this statement, and the statement is, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of a plan, local law, ordinance, rule, or regulation be the only approvals which must be granted to enable the proposed action to proceed? In this case, this is a legislative act. Again, not associated with a specific project. If yes, complete sections C, F, and G. So when someone is completing this document then, they're only completing C, F, and G. So we are doing planning and zoning actions, adopted land use plans, zoning and existing community services, and then of course skipping through the rest of this part 1. If you had a project, a location-specific project, the applicant, the sponsor of that project would complete this entire document. So it's different for a legislative action. So that brings us to part 2. Part 2 is a similar format in terms of the review will look different if we had a specific site-related project. So for this, if you answer yes, you are then to complete the rest of the questions, the statements. And if you say no, then you're going on to the next ones. So for that, we went through each one and evaluated and responded appropriately. The third section is in many ways a summary of everything that you have reviewed for parts 1 and parts 2. And oftentimes you'll see municipalities, they provide additional information to really provide not only the legislative body but the public more of a elaboration on how that conclusion, that determination was made. So for this process, we have on this type 3, or part 3, see attached notice of determination of non-significance. The determination of non-significance, the negative declaration, is also, and that's 29 pages of...
It's this, right?
Correct.
So it's this one.
It takes the reviewer, public, everyone, through the process of how we got to where we are, and then goes further and evaluates each one of those environmental concerns and how it relates to the proposal for a zoning code update. Again, very different than a site-specific project where your seeker review looks very, very different. So for this, the highlight is the action is limited to the adoption of a zoning code update and rezoning of the parcels as shown on the updated zoning map. This does not include any projects. There are no projects that are proposed under this. When we, assuming that a code is adopted, and even today under the current code, every project that goes before a land use board is evaluated under the seeker process. In some instances, the action that's being proposed is listed as a type 2, and we reference the number in that type 2 list. In other instances, it might be a type 1 action, and we have to complete the seeker process, and in some it's unlisted. So every project that comes before a land use board is evaluated based on a seeker. I've gone through a lot. Are there any questions related to this?
Do you have any questions? Comments?
I guess I have a question. It's not project-based, but by changing the zoning and allowing so much more development, isn't that an impact?
So what we're doing when you're adopting a zoning code is you're setting up potential framework. Now, no projects could be applied for, or a number of projects could be applied for. The proper use of seeker is to evaluate each project individually and how it then impacts that site. So if we were to receive an application for, and I'm just throwing this out, a 1,000-unit apartment building on an acre of property, we're evaluating all of those aspects that seeker takes into consideration: the flora, the fauna, the utilities, the transportation network, all of those items. And so that is done very differently than a zoning code update. So the zoning code update is a legislative action.
Anybody else have a comment or question?
I just want to make sure my understanding is correct. So because the potential adoption of the zoning code is a legislative act, it does not have any direct impacts on any of the things that you would see if there was a project being planned, because it is paper and rules about how we are going to allow things to happen in the village.
Correct, and each project is then evaluated using that seeker legislation.
Thank you.
Adam, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah. It sounds like there might be some places that do decide to do it and some places that don't. I feel like it's hard to, without obviously knowing, being in the room as to why. I mean, have you ever seen why, some communities might pursue it and some might not?
I have. Sometimes it's, there may be additional concerns on it. I have seen it done for comprehensive plans, but I have also seen it not done for comprehensive plans. I've seen it not done for zoning code updates. It's the prerogative of that legislative body, but when we're reviewing, and when I say we, when the village attorney and myself are looking at these documents, it behooves us to do it the correct way. My role here, as well as the village attorney, is to reduce the likelihood of any sort of litigation. When we're looking at a zoning code update and different projects, we're ensuring that they're evaluated properly. And in this case, it was designated as a type 1. and we did a thorough evaluation and provided a reasoned elaboration with additional information as to how we are recommending a negative declaration. So these things are not taken lightly, but the proper path has been followed for this.
So it sounds like in some of those instances, they may have had, excuse me, they may have had a designated brownfield opportunity area or some other thing within the jurisdiction that might say, we might need to dig into this more.
Well, it's hard for me not having researched every single municipality and every single action that they've taken. From my experience, there are some, when you're going through a particular process, you may recommend that a positive declaration be issued to trigger that GEIS, Generic Environmental Impact Statement. A generic environmental impact statement does not absolve a municipality from conducting a secret review on every single project. In fact, I would highly recommend going that path. A generic environmental impact statement provides, if you're doing one for a specific project, so if you have a number of parcels that are working together as one particular project, so let's say, in the city of Rochester, maybe the Citygate project. It might be appropriate to do it for that because I talk often how you're creating the box and that every project that then is coming in on that site needs to fit into that box. So the premise of a generic environmental impact statement for the zoning code making development faster and more efficient is a false premise because we have to do seeker on each individual project.
Regardless of whether or not something had been done before.
Well, a generic environmental impact statement is not going to provide us the information that we need that's site-specific when we have a project before us.
Okay.
If I could just add to that for a moment. The village of Fairport, okay, and the process that it is following is unique to the characteristics.
Excuse me, can you use the microphone?
I'm sure. Yeah, sorry. I was told there was like feedback, so I'm trying to stay a little
Why don't you just have
farther away from it.
Tracy turn her microphone in your direction because they're picking up so highly
Let's see if I
today.
can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. I just want to try to not get too close to the thing. The process that the village of Fairport is following or decides to follow is unique to the characteristics of the village of Fairport and the context within which it is evaluating this action. And so what I mean by that is a GEIS is not per se the only methodology by which a municipality can adopt a zoning code. Yes, there are examples certainly of towns and cities using villages using that process. There are many other instances where they do not use that process. There are probably, of the ones I could probably locate that use a GIS, there's probably 3 times as many that would use a negative declaration procedure. Not to say that either is incorrect, they are both legally permissible. The standard that this board needs to view this action by is whether or not, based on this code, based on what its action is, that it has determined that there may be one or more potentially significant adverse impacts to the village of Fairport as a result of adopting this code, based on the context of this code compared to its current code, compared to its comprehensive plan. And I can't speak to Victor or Penfield or Pittsford, but the years within which they were doing this, whatever was happening in that community at that moment, whatever the current law was at that time, I can't say, comparatively speaking, what they were changing it to from what it was. They felt that was appropriate for their community, and I would defer to their legislative prerogative to make that decision, just as I would defer to this board to do the same thing here. So if you decide that there may be one or more potentially significant adverse impacts because of this code, then the necessary result of that is, as the village planner explained, it is a positive declaration, which means you have to move on to a environmental impact statement process. If you decide that there is not one or more potentially significant adverse impacts, then you adopt a negative declaration and your seeker process is concluded. In order to adopt a negative declaration, the standard you have to view this is whether you've identified the relevant areas of concern. That's your part 1. Whether you've taken a hard look at those areas and then rendered a reasoned elaboration, that's part 2 and part 3. So those are the proposed forms that the village planner has prepared. I have assisted the village planner in reviewing those and providing my comments. So these are all subject to review of this board. If you believe, based on the elaboration that's been provided, that this explains why there is no impact, then you are within your legal authority to adopt a negative declaration. That is a permissible method by which you would judge even a complete zoning code update such as this, and there are many examples of other villages and other towns doing precisely that.
Does anyone else on the board have questions or comments?
I guess I have a concern that going through the process for the comprehensive plan, the GEIS was not done then. And now we're putting in zoning code and it's not being done now.
There's no requirement that a municipality do a GEIS.
But maybe it's a really good idea.
In this instance, I would not recommend it, and I don't think it's warranted. So we have gone through all of the statements within seeker. We've provided a reasoned elaboration as to why there won't be any impacts, and as I noted, each project is evaluated on its own merits when it goes before a land use board.
Thank you.
Anyone have any comments? Adam, you're looking very quizzically, but I'm going to ask you, do you have a
That's
question?
my thinking face. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just
All right,
reading.
we're going to give you another minute or two to think.
I have a question.
Sure.
Here, I turned my nose. Okay, thanks. Jill, can you something you just said, I just want to clarify. So if a GEIS right now is not warranted, and you say every project that comes before you guys, you go through individually, would a GEIS ever be warranted for an individual project?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. So it depends what is proposed. Have I been involved with GEISs for projects before? I absolutely have. And as I mentioned, it creates that box. It's typically for large-scale projects that we know have an impact. This is not proposing a specific project. This is proposing regulations to govern those projects.
Right, so if a project was proposed, then that would still be an option or something
Correct.
that would be recommended.
Maybe.
Depending
on, yeah.
Right.
It's,
but not doing it now doesn't preclude doing it in the future. Is what-
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna ask a question while Adam is, whoa,
I turned mine off.
they are sensitive. I just wanna thank our village attorney for the explanation of, the differences between the communities, because I think that's super important, because Fairport is Fairport, and we need to look at these things from the standpoint of what our community needs, what is recommended for our needs. And I was curious about the time frame of those things, because most of them are at least 5 to 10 years in the past. We don't know what their goals for their zoning code were. We don't know if they, like Adam said, if they had projects or plans in place, and what legal changes have happened in the law potentially regarding a GEIS since that time frame. So that was super helpful. Thank you very much.
Also add that I noticed they're all towns and they all have a significant amount of land in those towns versus a 1.5 square mile village. I don't think that that really has any influence on whether we do this because it's specific to Fairport or not, but when I heard those discussions, it's the city of Rochester. There's a lot more property in the city of Rochester than there is in the village of Fairport. There's much more property in the town of Pittsford, the town of Victor, and the town of Penfield. They're all significant amounts of land where we are 1.5 square miles. I don't know that that has any influence either on whether they chose to do it that way or not. But
I have a
just
question
throwing it out
about that also. Jill, can you maybe explain, would there be a difference between, say, town of Parrington versus village of Fairport in terms of what?
A seeker?
Yeah. So it all depends on what is being proposed and what that baseline is. Okay. So it's, seeker is not the same for everyone. Right. Thank you.
How are we doing, Adam?
Good, I'm just refamiliarizing myself with the back part of this here. I mean, yeah.
Do you have a question or comment? You all set?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Last call, question or comment for the board? Okay, with hearing none, I will take a vote. All in favor of approval? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
I gotta go now.
Okay, so that's 4-1. And we can move on to the next item of the agenda. If I can find where I stuck my agenda. Okay. So that takes us to item number 3. Can I have a motion by the village board to adopt local law number 2 of 2026 to enact the new village zoning code and zoning map and amend and repeal certain chapters of the code of the village of Fairport, and attached was the link to the final draft zoning code documents. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
By trustee Wojtka.
Second.
By trustee Banowski. Okay, so let's open it up for questions and comments. I was just going to ask something about 4-story buildings. So we have heard lots of comments from people that they don't want what's in here because it would allow a 4-story building. However, I'm aware of in the current code, there is not a height requirement, or the height requirement is for 2 stories is for 24 feet, and then beyond that, it's based on whatever the planning board decides based on their discussions. Am I basing that correctly? Whereas the new code will adopt design standards that are not existing in the code today about what the building looks like, where it should align, if a maximum height for it being 55 feet, but that is not necessarily what will be allowed. The other things that are in consideration in the new code are views and vistas, which that is a design requirement where I'm going to let you step in and go, you got that right, you got that wrong. In the current code, there are no design requirements. There's design overlay district, which is very loose and very general. And some of the major comments that I heard from people are that when some projects have gone into place, there was a lack of consideration about how they cut off views and vistas from other areas around the building. There is a 5-story building located on North Main Street. There is a 4-story building, if not more than one, located on South Main Street. And those buildings all came from the current code that does not have these design requirements. Can you speak to that, Jill? That was a mouthful.
Yes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the existing code and the proposed code. So
thank you.
Both codes have 24 feet height for minimum, and the maximum is 45 feet for each. The existing code says that the planning board can approve a taller structure, basically based on the review of views and vistas, adjacent buildings, village character. It doesn't give a lot of detail, it doesn't give a lot of guardrails as to how the planning board should evaluate under what criteria, etc. So it also doesn't have a, this is as tall as you can go. The draft code, when we heard comments from folks that there were a mix of comments that some folks said we'd like to see taller buildings and some folks said we'd actually like to see shorter buildings. So given all of that and understanding how the existing code works, the proposed code allows a maximum of 55 feet by special permit. But beyond that, if you're going to go that 4-story, you either have to be set back 15 feet from that front lot line, and within that 15 feet has to be public space, park area, seating area, etc. Or you can build up to that front wall, that front line, and have the 4-story stepped back. So that's an actual requirement. It's not,
Is there any kind of requirement, so when a building on South Main Street went in that is 4 stories tall, it's set back away from the road, and it also is set back on the top story. Were there any requirements that they had to do anything to enhance the property in front of the building?
I hate to comment on.
In our code, was there anything in our
Yes.
code that indicated that they had to do that?
There is the option for the planning board to require for an applicant to provide that front gathering area or some sort of activate that front area. So you can see that portion of code actually used for the new building on South Main Street,
Okay.
where there is seating area in that front yard setback as required by the planning board. So the proposed code takes many of those elements from the existing code and actually provides those guardrails to ensure that the planning board has a tool to evaluate, and also that the community has a better knowledge of what is being used to evaluate. We did go further in the considerations, again, adjacent buildings, pedestrian impact, area canal views, street enclosure, and village character. We want to ensure that if a proposal is before the planning board that is proposing 4 stories and a maximum, again, of 55 feet in height, that the planning board has that criteria to really weigh the benefits and the cost to having a building of that height, and that they also, in the same token, have the ability to deny that. So just because a process is in the code, such as special permit, and I know I've been before the board several times and mentioned that special permits are yes maybes, there's also an element of no. So the proposed code has more guardrails to ensure that we're getting the development as a community that we do desire. The special permit process also is a public hearing, so there is that opportunity for the public to participate and provide their feedback.
Versus the old code did not have those details.
It didn't have the special permit. It was entertained under a site plan review, and so that does have the public participation.
Okay. While we're on this topic, does anybody else have any questions about building height and design requirements for buildings on Main Street in our commercial district?
I was just going to comment that it seems like the draft zoning code seems to be more restrictive and put more limits on what type of development, on heights, on, it takes into a lot, it takes other variables into consideration rather than just height and space. Taking into the consideration of the outdoor dining, the public space, the pedestrian spaces, that is not something that our current code takes into account, unless specifically stated by the planning board.
There is a code provision that acknowledges that there should be a front area that is for gathering space, for seating, etc. if your building is going to be set back. The way the design overlay district is structured leaves the opportunity for the planning board to waive a lot of things, and it's under their purview. The special permit process provides an opportunity, again, to have those guardrails, to have an evaluation tool as you're going through the review of that project. I think it also makes it easier for the public to comment because they know the evaluation tool that's being utilized by the planning board. So that item does not currently exist under the current code.
Thank you.
Any questions about 4 stories?
Let's move on to RVs. Everybody else's favorite topic. If we look at the current code versus what's in the proposed zoning code, can you give us a rundown of what's in the current code versus how it rolls out in the draft code?
So the current code is a little bit awkward for a practitioner because it is a section outside of the zoning code that requires review by the zoning board of appeals and the issuance of a special permit that goes with the occupant of that structure versus the land. So we oftentimes talk about how these processes go with the land and not the person. Under the existing code, it goes with the person. So if you are not meeting the code, you do have to go through the special permit process, which again is a yes, maybe. The first time, the existing code.
This is the existing code.
Correct.
I just want to be clear about that.
Under the existing code, a special permit can be issued for a 1-year period of time, and then the applicant needs to come back before the zoning board of appeals. If the applicant is complying with any conditions that were associated with that special permit, the zoning board must continue that approval, and they are able to approve it for up to 5 years, for a 5-year period.
So are there some requirements tied to the current zoning code with regard to delivering that special permit? And does this exist everywhere in our village versus a particular area? I've heard people saying there's going to be RVs everywhere. Today, does the code allows it with a special permit, and it allows it everywhere in our village, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
As far as the existing code, it does dictate the location, much like the proposed code, and also screening. If you are not meeting those requirements, you're unable to meet those requirements. So there are some times where a garage might be in a location that is dictated by code where that RV can be placed. That's when you have to come for a special permit. So it's when you are not meeting that code. The draft code makes it a little bit more challenging in that if you are not meeting the code, you are required to go before the zoning board of appeals for an area variance, which, as I've explained, starts at no. So the lift is a little bit higher. We see a lot of people that are very interested in participating in our recreational life, and I think the last couple days have told us that we have very cold weather, and then for what seems like a short period of time, we have very nice weather. So we have a number of residents that we've seen even before the zoning board of appeals that they may have an RV, they may have a boat, they may have jet skis that they're looking to use. And for some people, it's easier for them to store them on site in their driveway. We've had a couple special permits that have been issued for folks when they're going to be locating RVs in their driveway. And so the zoning board has said, we're a community that has recreational uses. We're also, I think, viewing it as there are a number of folks that participate in this, but we also want to make sure that we have parameters so that when there is an issue, that we're able to properly cite that and manage with that. So noting that we have a short time frame, and from discussions with the village board, we elected to update the code and put in a time frame that it was acceptable to have a certain size RV in your driveway as long as it was 10 feet from that right of way. The rest of the year, you must comply with the code requirements of having it stored in the rear or the side yard. And again, if you're unable to do that, it does require an area variance from the zoning board of appeals.
Or for you to move it off-site.
Or you can most definitely move it off-site.
I think my experience has been that most people, if they don't have a side or a back, they move it off-site. I have a neighbor across the street who has a very large RV. They just move it off-site when they're out of season.
So I am a village resident, and the neighborhood that I live in, there are a couple folks that they do have RVs in their driveways for that short summer period of time, and then it's stored off-site during the winter. So I think it's a very common occurrence.
Okay, I'm gonna, now that we introduced that, I'll just go down the, Trustee Nazarian, do you have any questions about that?
No.
Trustee Wojcika, do you have any questions about that?
No questions, just some things to clarify because it seems like there's confusion. So I just want to make sure that I have it correct, and I'm just going to put it out there for everyone to understand. In the current existing code, there is no size limit onto the size of boat, RV, ski-doos, whatever it is. There's no current size limit to what you can have on your property or in your driveway.
So we don't allow it to be in the driveway.
Okay, but either the side or the backyard storage.
There is currently no size limit. We're continuing that for the proposed code. The size limit is specific to in your driveway
Right.
between April and November.
And yeah, something else. The current code does not have any restrictions on whether people can use any type of recreational vehicle or boat for living or sleeping use. That's what the current code has. You can't, so people could rent their RV out or have people do whatever for that.
I must say, some of these things, that as you probably went through the code, you went, why in the world are we regulating that? And I can tell you from experience that I've seen these things happen.
Yep.
So if you don't have something in the code, you're unable to cite it.
Correct.
And so that's why we clarified and made it crystal clear that it cannot be used to live in.
Correct. Thank you. So currently, are there, I know this is probably off the top of your head, how many special permits have been issued for residents to either have a boat or an RV? You can, best guess is good, because I know this is just in the past year.
I will tell you, I have been here almost 4 years, and I had one applicant come back to renew his special permit for a RV, and I have also had one applicant apply for and return to the zoning board to renew. So 2 special permits.
In 4 years.
In 4 years for the entire village.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
I do not have anything else.
Okay.
Sorry, that's me. And to clarify that, again, the area variance starts at a no, whereas the special permit is a yes, maybe.
It's a yes, maybe. It can also result in a no.
Okay, but we currently have a yes, maybe, and we would be going to an area variance where it would, the burden of convincing would be on the resident who wants to store something.
It's a heavier lift.
Okay.
The no versus the yes maybe is sort of a shorthand way of saying that from a legal perspective, the burden of proof on the applicant is higher and higher. So you're permitted as of right, very low, right? You go in, you get a permit from the code office, you're done, right? Special permit, the law governing special permits is one of deeming that use to be in harmony with the surrounding community. So that's why it's a yes maybe, because it's already deemed to be consistent because of what it is recognized under New York state law. The variance is higher than that because the variance is saying, we know that it's prohibited in the code, but we are giving the zoning board the ability to step in, and if you meet the 5 criteria that they have to apply it to, they are allowed to override the code and allow that to be permitted in, whatever property we're talking about. So that's why yes, maybe versus no. No is a little bit higher of a threshold from a legal perspective in terms of the weight that the boards have.
I'm going to turn my mic on, so I just don't want... Adam, do you have any questions about this? Tracy, do you have any questions or comments about this?
What is because you say very short season, the new code says April to November. What is it in the old code?
There is no season.
So if you had a special permit for the boat to be in your driveway?
As long as there were no conditions associated with a time frame, then
So they might have attached a condition,
yes.
time frame.
Yeah, and one that I'm thinking of the top of my head, there is a time frame attached to the presence of that RV in the driveway.
The one that you passed?
Correct.
Okay. So currently there's no, by code, there's no time frame, but the ZBA in passing the special permit could apply a time frame.
Correct.
In the new code, there is a time frame that is cited for those that meet all the criteria, but they still have to meet that criteria that's covered.
Correct.
Quick follow-up to that. So by that token, in the existing code, if someone had a special permit, they could have their boat in their yard all year.
If the special permit was issued and didn't provide a timeline, a time frame, then yes.
Okay. So that,
But as staff to the zoning board, I wouldn't advise that.
right.
That's why I feel comfortable with this proposal to include a time frame in there, because that's something that I would not only recommend to the zoning board to consider, but also something that I think is appropriate in this instance.
And if I could, can I add something? Because I think the questions that I'm hearing from all 5 members of the board are sort of trying to weigh the relative regulatory strength of what we currently have versus what is being proposed. Is that a fair characterization of this?
Yeah.
So the variance standards that the new code proposes and why I believe it's being recommended by the village planner to convert from the special permit to the variance standard is it's not really just going to be a meaningless check the box review if something comes into the zoning board, because the 5 criteria that the board has to look at, one of them is, does it result in an undesirable change in the character of the surrounding neighborhood? So they're going to have to decide whether, based on whatever property they're talking about, parking an RV or a ski-doo or whatever it is in a particular spot on that property is going to impact or not the surrounding property. So number 1, right? So that's a relevant factor that will likely be important for the board. The second one is going to be, is it substantial? Again, how much deviation are we talking about from what's being regulated in the new code? I think, again, will probably be a second criteria that the board is going to be very interested in looking at. A third one is going to be, is it self-created? 99 times out of 100, my guess is going to be that it is self-created, because most people are going to voluntarily decide whether to own a recreational vehicle that is being regulated by the village code. So that those 3 factors are weighing for or against something, I suspect, again, not trying to prejudge applications before they're made, but a lot of those criteria will have direct relevance on whether or not that board is going to decide whether it is a good idea to grant this and allow it or to not allow it, because they just can't meet the regulatory standards that are being imposed. So it is bumping it up to a threshold that is going to be difficult for some to meet based on whatever property they have or what they're purchasing, or what limitations they can place on the use of that, where it's being parked, how long it's going to be there, those sorts of things. The screening that could be installed, for example, to try to shield it from the surrounding property. So I just want to point that out in case you had questions about, well, what are we really switching to? In terms of the standards that they would be judged by. if this were to be adopted.
What are the other two?
The other two are whether it results in environmental impact on the surrounding area. And then the fifth is whether there's some other feasible method that the applicant could implement that would not require a variance. So feasible could be, they would like to buy a, I'm just arbitrarily picking numbers here, but a 50-foot long massive RV. Maybe that's not necessarily the most feasible thing to purchase. Maybe they can shrink it, have a smaller thing. Maybe there's a better location. Whatever the factors would be of feasibility. Some of it's financial driven. You can look at the cost of some of this stuff. But those are the 5 total. So I suspect, I didn't mention those because those are probably, my guess would be based on what this is, probably a little bit more secondary than the other 3.
Trustee Briggs, did you have any more questions?
No.
Okay. Sit back here and see if that can avoid getting some feedback. Did anyone else from the board have further questions or comments regarding this particular topic? Okay. You do?
I have a comment.
Right ahead.
Well, I think, I've heard comments tonight, and I've heard comments from neighbors and people that I've talked to that, all of a sudden there's going to be RVs and boats like all over the place, and hinting at that currently there was no provision whatsoever in the current code that would even be an option for anyone, which is not true. And that there would just be a carte blanche, you can park your boat, at your neighbor's house if you want, moving forward. But I just want to clarify and say that there's, in the existing code, you can have an RV. And in the draft code, it would be actually more regulated in how that would be stored. So I think it's really important to clarify that, because I agree, I've lived here 28 years. I don't want to see my street filled with boats. But that, first of all, isn't happening now under the existing code that would allow for that in some manner.
With a special permit if
Right,
you didn't meet the code.
with a special permit, and it wouldn't allow for that in the future as well. So I just want to make sure that's very clear.
Okay. Adam, you look like you just turned it on.
And if that's what happens, we change it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That's correct. I mean, anything in this code would, the intent is for it to be a dynamic document. So it's structured so that we can update it and be reactive and nimble as we're seeing things happen and change in our community.
And that's something we could defend if we needed to change it.
Absolutely.
And part of, I hadn't gotten there yet because I was saving it until after we went through all the topics. I was going to ask to be read into the record that while I won't be here 12 months from now to push on this, but that I was going to ask to be read into the record that there would be a 6-month review and a 12-month review and determine if there were any negative impacts to the community by any of the things that were passed. If there were positive impacts to the community, I think that's important to discover as well. And that we have that opportunity to discuss 6 months out a review of the actions that came from this code. And if we need to make adjustments, then we make adjustments. And I'll go back to the line of where we were going with things, but I wanted to make sure that that was added as part of the discussion and recorded into the record that I asked for that. So we've talked about RVs, we've talked about 4-story buildings. I think the last thing on our major list of items is talking about ADUs. And just, do you want to give a heads up highlight of the current state versus where we are going? I know we've discussed this multiple times. And could you tell, I'm just going to bring it up before we even start talking about this, because I continually have heard that we're going to have people parking everywhere, every which way on every street, and that you're not going to be able to find the street because there are going to be so many cars parked in the streets from ADUs. Is there a parking requirement if you decide to add an ADU to your property?
There is, so you're required to provide 1 parking space.
In the street?
On site.
On site.
So when I talk about parking, it's all parking that's required on site.
In your front yard?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you go with the rest of it. I just wanted to talk about parking because I'm so afraid that we're gonna have cars parked in every front yard with every ADU. So thank you for sharing that.
The current code does not allow people to park vehicles on their front yard, and as I mentioned, a resident, I do see people that park their vehicles on their front yard. And so I'm as a side note, I'm encouraging everyone to please not do that. Currently, the existing code allows only one dwelling except in the RE district. So when I refer to the RE district, the majority of those parcels are located on Church Street. And if you think about those, a lot of them are very Church Street, East Church Street, so going towards Turk Hill. Those lots are typically quite deep. And so the current code allows for 2 structures to be constructed there. So you could have 2 single-family homes as long as you're meeting those lot, area, and yard requirements. Lot, yard, and bulk requirements. So you could theoretically construct an additional single-family unit in that district. We do not...
I don't want you to be remiss in forgetting East Avenue and High Street are also part of the RE district.
Correct, they are. I typically use the example of Church Street because most people are familiar. They go in and out on Church Street. East is maybe not as highly traveled as Church Street.
You're right.
We do allow, obviously, for additions to be put on structures, and we have received applications for additions to be put on structures that have many of the characteristics of what folks may consider an ADU, except we do not allow them to have kitchens. The draft code continues that thought of only allowing one dwelling except in the RTM district, which is a combination of a couple of districts. But again, you're only able to build that second unit, whether it be a single-family structure, 2-family structure, whatever might be permitted, if you are meeting the lot, yard, and bulk requirements. If you are not meeting those requirements, you do require an area variance. And every time I note a special process, I want to emphasize that that requires public comment, so the public has the opportunity to provide their feedback. The draft code allows for 1 accessory dwelling unit per single-family home. It must be attached to the principal structure, so I want to emphasize it is not something that is detached. The draft code does not provide the ability to convert your garage into living space, nor does it legalize those existing. The maximum for an accessory dwelling unit is 650 square feet, and it's limited to 1 bedroom. It cannot extend past the existing front wall, so you will not see the ADU become perhaps that item that you view from the street. And it does require 1 additional parking space. So these are parameters that have been set up to allow for accessory dwelling units to be constructed within those parameters and those thresholds that we heard from the community were important. So again, limiting the size to 650 square feet, limiting the number of bedrooms to 1, and of course requiring 1 parking space.
Okay, so I'll start this end again. And Sarah, do you want to pass to Heidi? You don't look like you're ready with a question yet. Heidi, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, just a clarification again that the current existing code that we now have does not have side limits, does not have any parking requirements, and does not have any rules about where on the lot or attached or detached to the house that the ADU could be.
So that's a lot I'm going to try to...
Sorry, I know. Sorry, so the location, it doesn't have, there's no restrictions on the location of the ADU currently in the code.
We do not have provisions to allow for an ADU. We have provisions to allow for an addition, which
Right.
doesn't dictate where that addition can be. It doesn't limit the size of an addition. When we have an addition, let's, for sake of conversation, talk about an addition on a single-family home. A single-family home is a single-family home. The parking requirement is not changing because of the size of the single-family home or the provision of an addition to the single-family home. Going forward, if somebody came and submitted an application for an accessory dwelling unit, again, that includes a kitchen area limited to 650 square feet and 1 bedroom, they are required to provide 1 parking space.
So to me, it just sounds like the proposed zoning code has more restrictions on what can be done and how it can be done compared to what the current code says that we have been utilizing for however long we've had this code for.
Yes, we've had the code since 1992, so I theorize that, I can't tell you the number of additions that have occurred, but the code again does not require an additional parking space for the creation of an additional bedroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got like a couple of thoughts. So, we hear from folks as they're providing feedback. This is working, right? Am I okay? And understandably, as things change and evolve, some folks are wondering what does that mean. Maybe that brings up some concerns. And I'd kind of actually like to fold this into, one of the questions that was asked tonight was, so who do we work for? And I know we all have different folks up here, right? So we all have different ways that we see that, but the way I at least see the answer to that is that I work for the folks here now, but I'm also working for the folks in the future. That does include us, but it does include folks who may live here as well. Some of that, as we kind of mentioned, are potentially our kids and our grandkids. It's pretty common that when you hear people saying, well, I want to have a place where my kids or my grandkids can move back, that's pretty universal in the village. Now, I don't know about you all, but I plan on not being dead by the time that happens. So, if we could just kind of run at the numbers, we have maybe about 2,400 dwellings in the village, but let's say we have 2,000, keeping that simple. If even 1/8 of our kids or grandkids want to move back, that's 250 people. So they need to have some place to go, if that's the case. And, if we keep saying that that's what we want, but we don't kind of do anything about it, it's going to be really hard to rationalize that with our kids and our grandkids, I think. This also, creates that conflict as well, which is, I understand, are we going to our little village resolve this massive national issue? And it is national. We're not going to go out there and provide housing for everybody in the entire country, but at the same time, what if no other community did? Then we'd still be in the same position, maybe even worse. So I think we have an opportunity here to be part of the solution as this comes about. And if we don't, the other path that leads us down is a path where we tear down our forests and tear up our farms in order to build housing. I think that's also something that we wouldn't want to see. We from an environmental standpoint, we need those trees. But from a recreational standpoint, it gives us a way to relax, connect with each other, and connect with nature. So this is kind of what I see here, right? So we have this position where we are now, but where are we also heading? And so how do we be a part of that solution that is also environmentally responsible? This is one way that we do that, is by providing for options. One thing I think would be interesting to point out too is that ADUs have actually been in the past 2 comp plans. So not the most recent one, but but the recent one, or the one before that. So we have been talking about this for actually probably 15 to 20 years. This is something that's been on the radar. And other places that have approached this really well are in places like Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky. They've seen not only the ability to provide housing for people, but also to create financially sustainable communities. I also hear that, you know, okay, ADUs, what's the stress on our utilities? I think it's important to point out that it's possible for a single family home to house 8 people. And at that point, 8 people could also be 2 families in terms of what we might be talking about on utility demands. So just keeping things as a single family building doesn't really, I think, address that concern. And this is where also like an education on how things get built comes into play as well too. Like we were mentioning, when a project is submitted for, we go through the secret process. You go through a process where you check to make sure your utilities can handle that. And when that happens, if something is found to be deficient, it's usually on the property owner to pay for that. Sometimes municipalities help, but that's how we're able to customize each approach as appropriate for what that landowner wants to do. So I understand that there's concern because it is rather nebulous, right? We don't know exactly what it is because we don't have all the projects that may or may not even happen in front of us. You know, in fact, I think last time we had a chance to talk, we pointed out that in the RE district, is it the RE district, right, where if you have a parcel that's large enough, you can build a separate building? And at least as long as you've been here, you've not received a permit for one of those, is that right?
I have not. I
Right.
received an inquiry.
Okay. So I think given the information that we have in front of us, and also an understanding of the current situation and how we, as a community, responsibly address that, I think this is a step in the right direction. It balances out some of those concerns with actually some of the things that we say we want.
Trustee Briggs, did you have some questions or comments?
Just some clarity on like granny flats and in-law suites. So right now, if you wanted to have a granny flat and convert your basement for your in-laws, you can't add a kitchen.
That is correct.
Okay.
Trustee Wickett, did you have anything? I'm coming back this way because I have something to add to the conversation.
I'm good. Thank you.
Sarah, did you have anything? Okay, so on Friday, today's Monday, right? On Friday, I attended along with Trustee Wojka, the Greater Rochester Aging, I can never remember what the P and the E stand for, but I don't see Dave Stites here. He is one of the practitioners who runs this aging program at Nazareth College every year, and I've attended for the last 4 years. And it's an opportunity for you to hear from the community as a whole on aging in the Rochester area. And in fact, while I was waiting for it to start, I got to talk to people from AARP, who puts out a brochure that we have on our website talking about what is an ADU and how does it get used in your community and what's the value of having ADUs, because believe it or not, AARP, those old people, really support this idea because it creates living spaces for seniors that are size appropriate for either a single, in our community we're talking about having just one resident, but in some communities an ADU is larger than what we're talking about. And I just wanted to bring it up that every time I've attended this program on aging in the community, the biggest points that I've heard over and over in the last 4 years is having a place to live, which doesn't mean a single family house that is 1,500 to 2,500 square feet. It's about right sizing for those members of our community who want to stay in the community but need a place to live, or actually in situations where you may have a family that's co-locating in one spot where you have mom, dad, kids, and a senior citizen who wants to live in close proximity. ARP is a very large proponent of this. Every year that I've been there, it's been the discussion about walkability in your community, not drivability in your community, but walkability and bikeability, so that there are multiple modes of transportation other than just cars in your community. While those don't come into play with what we're discussing this evening, I think it's important to note that this isn't just a few people going, let's add some housing. It's something that's supported by a broader community that supports senior citizens in our country. And I think it should be thought about with this. It provides a granny flat, which now currently is not legal, or an in-law apartment, or if you have a child who can't live on their own in a single location, that they can be in close proximity. I know there are special needs people, individuals in our community who would benefit from that. So I think that we have to think about this aside from everything needs to be a single family house, whether it's owned and occupied, or whether it's a single family house that is a rental, because those exist in our community as well. And we seem to leave those out of the conversation all the time, as expecting that a single family house is owner occupied all the time. That is not the case in our community. So, okay, I'm gonna step off my little platform, but I did want to bring up that the broader aging community is asking for these to be more acceptable in communities.
I want to add that not only can it be attached, but it can also be within. So as Trustee Briggs noted, you could, under the proposed code, also convert a portion of your existing home to an accessory dwelling unit.
Without adding to the footprint.
Correct.
Which was the case in my home. We had a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, small galley kitchen in the home that my family moved in 1966 in this village of Fairport. And there was an older lady who lived there until she could live there no longer because she was not able to take care of herself. But that's how these properties can be used in our community. I'm going to throw it back out. Any last questions on this? Okay. I think I covered that I wanted us to do a review at 6 months and 12 months, and that we can go back and change something. Can you just state, Jill, have you had anybody coming and asking you about an ADU type structure in other areas other than RE?
Yes.
And the comment was, we don't allow that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna stop this part of the discussion there, just because I think those were the three main areas that we heard the greatest number of concerns. I'll just go back down, and why don't I start at the other end? Trustee Briggs, do you have any other comments that you'd like to add?
Just the comments tonight and that conversation, I think, should have been out there in the community for the last 2 years. But,
Okay.
Maybe more people would understand and support it.
I'll state that there has been, I don't know how many times we have said, if you have a question, call up Jill, schedule a meeting with her. She would be happy to discuss this. She's made the statement that she would be happy to go for a run very early in the morning or meet with individuals at any time they would like. The opportunity has been there for 2 years now, and I will refute that you are welcome to make that comment, but I think there's been every opportunity over 2 years for people to meet with Jill. We've had meetings at the library. I learned an awful lot about our zoning code sitting there for 5 days in a row after the new draft zoning code was introduced. I think that there have been opportunities throughout the community. If I have reached out to members that I have gotten emails from, and I have reached back out to them at least 5 times, saying I would come meet with you anytime you would like. Jill is here to meet with people. I think there's been a lot of opportunities, and it's a choice people make of how much they want to come and learn about it.
I would just like to add that we recognized early on that there were some topics that brought a range of emotions from our community. And so we elected to have what amounted to FAQs on specific topics, and those continue to reside on the website today. We created a zoning code update page where all of the information resided, so that even if you couldn't attend any of the in-person meetings or on the online meetings, that you could still actively participate. So I'm actually very proud of the interaction that we had with the public. And I always say democracy means having your say, not getting your way. And so in this instance, we did a lot of outreach, more than I have ever done for any zoning code update or any comprehensive plan that I've been involved with, knowing that we are in a community where people absolutely adore the sights and sounds and everything about Fairport. And so we reached out to a broad range of people, and we heard things that run the gamut. And so I, as a practitioner, and I've been doing this for about 20 years, I'm very proud of the public engagement that we did.
I still have to cite on Jill's wall the post-it note that just says, no, 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 with no other comment. And you can take that to mean whatever you want.
But the important part is that there were folks that agreed with others and folks that disagreed with others. But everybody that came to any meeting that we had and anybody that engaged, it was because they were passionate about the village of Fairport. And as someone that has participated in community engagement that maybe has brought out at max 5 people, to know that we have so many people that are actively engaged in what is going on in Fairport really makes my heart sing. And so again, I emphasize that we did a thorough, and we activated the power of a lot of people to participate in their government, and I hope they continue to do so. I also encourage people to come to all the land use board meetings, because that's where the real work happens. So should the village board choose to adopt the zoning code update, the community sees it in practice 3 times a month at these board meetings when they are entertaining applications. It behooves the community to participate in that public process and provide feedback to see real impact occur in their communities. And at these meetings, it is rare that there are members of the public that are present. And so if we together as a community say that we care about how things turn out, it's important that we have continued engagement in these land use board meetings.
I'll throw it back to you because I commented after you made a comment. Okay. Adam, do you have anything?
No, I think it was good you brought it up too, because I think it was in the fall of 2024 where the team identified some of these topics, and we had several workshops. I think between October and November. I feel like November was when we had the one on ADUs where we were, and duplex conversions, where we dug into it, got into the weeds a little bit, and so throughout the process, it's been not shying away from things, but tackling, trying to get our arms around the topic and find that right balance.
Do you have anything you'd like to share, or you can pass?
I'm just going to say that I have lived a lot of different places, and I've been very involved in a lot of those communities that I have lived in. I've lived in 7 different states, and I have done a significant amount of scientific research and tried to get participation and tried to get a rate of return on surveys, on information, on feedback from people, and I have never seen the volume of effort that has been done regarding the zoning code, nor have I seen the volume of participation regarding the zoning code in I know it is not specific to land use or zoning code, but I feel like it is definitely adjacent in terms of trying to get participation, and what was done to reach the public in any and every manner possible was done. And I really appreciate all of the effort from yourself, from the zoning board and the zoning code working group, and all the efforts that they put forward to reach as many people in the community as humanly possible. So thank you.
Anything you'd like to share?
I have two things. First, as the newest, pretty new member of the board, I really do have to thank Jill for providing me with documents and sitting down with me and walking me through and answering my questions. It was a lot to kind of catch up on, and I feel like I had an opportunity to bounce everything off you, and so thank you for your patience with me. I do have a question, and I heard some comments earlier that I just feel like perhaps, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, John, but our village attorney could address people throwing around legalities of certain things. In your estimation, as our legal counsel, of all of this that you've looked at, do you feel like everything has been legally complied with? I just want to say it out loud because there are people who perhaps are not attorneys, but have looked at things that they consider to be not within our legal bounds. I just want to make sure that that is clarified. I know that's a really general question.
It's a very, very general
I
question.
know.
Well, you want the lawyer answer?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's, there have been questions about procedures being not legal and therefore things being null and void, and
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts to this process. There are also a lot of separate legal doctrines and allegations and other things that have been commented on. I will tell you that if you have a specific legal question, my first line of defense would be is I will give you attorney-client privilege advice with respect to any one of those issues, because there are certain aspects of some of the things that have been alleged that I think are very sensitive and do implicate certain board members in particular. But from a seeker perspective, for example, as I suggested before, to use that as an example, this board is within its authority under seeker to decide as it did that based on the evidence presented, based on the documents that have been provided and the input from the village planner, that one appropriate course of action was to determine, based on this evidence, that there is no significant adverse impact as a result of the zoning code, and to adopt the negative declaration, which I can tell you has been done in accordance with the strict procedural mandates of seeker, which is the legal standard that the cases would cite. The substantive parameters of seeker would be one of deference afforded to this board as a member of 5 that is tasked with determining what is appropriate for this village based on the evidence before you. So if you believe you took a hard look and rendered a reasoned elaboration, again, you are within your rights to adopt a negative declaration there. With respect to some of the other issues of public input, public participation, public notice, public hearings, the accuracy of information that has been provided to the public, this code in its current final form was posted on Friday. That is in accordance with the law. The open meetings law requires 24 hours, and so it has been done in accordance with that minimum standard, which is a recent development. To digress for 1 second, before a few years ago, it was as soon as practicable and could have been done 2 minutes before the meeting and still be legally permissible. Now, as a practical matter, that does deprive the public most instances of seeing something, but it is legally permissible. But I will say, this code on Friday's posting was not something that wasn't already in substantially similar form for many, many months preceding. And so, over time, yes, versions were updated, there were typographical errors or some things that were caught, but ultimately the only way to fix that and to ensure that the law is complied with is to renotice a public hearing, which we have done. So we had a second public hearing to make sure that the final version, without any alteration, is the version in fact before this board. So again, we have met the parameters of municipal home rule law, the open meetings law with respect to the adoption of the code.
Thank you.
I want to thank the zoning working group for all their diligent work to try and bring something that was not too far and not too little away from where we would like to see our community move to, based on the best efforts they could possibly make. I want to thank you, Jill, for your incredible number of hours that you worked on this, and all the time that you spent explaining to me every time I would walk in your office and go, so Jill, explain this part again to me, because I'm just not sure that I've got it. I hope that by now I've almost got it, but I'll still be in to ask you about it again, because this zoning code belongs to this board. It does not belong to Jill. It does not belong to our attorney. It does not belong to our village manager or our clerk treasurer. It belongs to this board, just like there were other documents that were adopted previously in 1992, that while that board adopted that code, it became ours as soon as we got elected. So I want to thank you all for the work that you put into this. And we've noted that we're going to go back and review everything. I don't have any further comments or questions, just to say thank you for all the work. And I do want to thank all the members of this community who have actually commented on this, because there are a lot of good comments and questions that bring up questions for us to go back and go, well, Jill, is it like this or is it like this? And to help clarify things by having those questions and those comments asked during these. So for anybody who thinks that we don't listen, we do listen. I do make notes, and I do go back and ask about these questions and comments after every single one of these meetings. So with that, I'm going to ask for any last comments or input from the board, and then I'm going to call for a vote after those last comments. So here's your last chance if you have something that you wanted to say. Do you have something that you wanted to say? Tracy? Okay. Adam? Heidi? Sarah? Okay. Then all in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Yes. Opposed.
Okay, so that will pass 4-1. And I want to thank the board for your considerable deliberations over this as well. All right, so moving on from there, item number 4 is a motion by the village board to adopt the amended fee schedule of the zoning code. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
By trustee Wojtka.
Second.
By trustee Nazarian. And just for understanding, I know it was included in our package. There was an update. It's not the overall fee schedule that we see during the board meeting. It is the fee schedule that's attached to the zoning code, correct?
No, so it is the overall fee schedule. There were changes that were made to it because the zoning code allows for additional processes, and so those had to be added to this and a fee assessed. So it is the one that you typically see around budget time, but in order to have a process and then obviously charge a fee, it had to be the fee schedule is proposed to be amended.
Okay. Any questions from the board about that?
Yeah, there was a lot of red on there and things that you took out and things that were added in. Did any of the fees go up at all?
So they did not. You see a lot of red on there because the prior fee schedule was connected with a specific portion of the code. So it referenced chapter 550, which is the existing code, and now we're referencing chapter 551, which is the proposed code, and these sections are different for area variance, etc. So I went through and ensured that the code reference matched up with whatever that process was. In addition, as I mentioned, there are processes that have been added to this code that of course had to have a corresponding fee added, so that's why they're added to the fee schedule. So this opportunity was one of cleanup, but also of addition.
Anything that you should highlight for us as far as an addition?
The additions are all found in the code.
I do see things that were taken out or combined with just one use variance and not residential versus commercial, but it does appear to be the exact same fee associated with that.
So prior to my starting with the village, there were two distinct fees for an area variance, one for residential and one for commercial. The process is the same, and so when I arrived, we ensured that that was the same cost. And so the removal to just one area variance application is reflective of that.
Yes, I read through it. It does seem fairly straightforward. But there was a lot of red. I wanted to make sure I'm not missing anything in all the red.
I'll go, are you okay, Tracy, if I move on?
Yes, I did
Okay.
read this all earlier.
Okay. Adam or Heidi, do you have any questions?
All set.
Sarah? Okay. With no further questions, I'll ask the board to vote all in favor of adopting the amended fee schedule. Aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then that will carry unanimously. Which will take us to item number 5, which is a motion by the village board to authorize an interfund transfer from the general fund to the electric fund in an amount not to exceed $650,000 between February 9th, which is today, and March 31st, 2026, for both of those dates, for the purposes of a revenue anticipation note to assist the electric fund in paying its power bills due to this historically cold winter. An interest rate shall be established by the clerk treasurer's office for the duration of this loan. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
By trustee Briggs,
Second.
by trustee Wojtka. Okay, so Megan, I'm gonna go for it since I attended the FMC meeting this morning and I've been reviewing this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, you wanna go for it?
I'm gonna go for it.
Alrighty.
All right, so we at FMC are seeing incredible amounts of cold weather impacts,
No kidding.
well, so the problem is that it's cold weather, but the price is not the price of us transmitting, but the price that we're having to pay is doubling or tripling in kilowatt hour. That's why you've been hearing notices and that's from the vendor. So it could be NIMPA, New York Municipal Power Authority. It could be in the purchased power that we get. All of those are, and RG&E and other utilities are experiencing it from wherever they get their power from as well. That's why you're seeing messages on the news. So, actually I'm on the wrong page of my notes. Hang on 1 second. Okay, so the preferred purchase power rate that we normally would get has been somewhere around 4 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour. The market standard rate now is 23 cents a kilowatt hour. The rate that we will get through preferred purchase is about 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's more than double what I said before. So we have a bill, and this part of this is not that unusual. Because we've had such a long, cold winter, our bill is getting to be much larger than it was because usage is up. It's not as much as it was in any year except for 2014 when we had that polar vortex going from 2014 into 2015. So what that means is the village has to purchase all this power that's really expensive during December and into January. But the village doesn't get payment for that power until 60 or 45 days after the fact. So in rare occasions like this, basically there's a cash flow problem. We can pay for all this power, but we don't have payment yet because people haven't paid their bills for what we had to purchase in January. So what the village is doing, and we did this before in that 2014-2015 season, the village is writing a loan, a revenue anticipation note to Fairport Electric. They will borrow no more than $650,000 to meet their current needs to pay their billing. It is like Fairport Electric is coming to the village and getting a loan, a short-term loan from us. They will pay us the interest that we would normally be earning on that money when it is in our investments. Megan will set that rate so that it's equivalent to what we would be getting if our money was still staying invested in the market where it is, not the markets, but whatever our investments are. That's your job to manage those. So Fairport Electric is saying, Village of Fairport, we don't want a gift, we're not making a grant, we want to come and ask you for a short-term loan until all of our ratepayers pay their bills so that we can now go back and pay you back the money you used or that we borrowed from you, but we need it right now to pay this bill that's due right now. And this is, the amount that they're borrowing is not the entire cost of the bill, it's covering a portion of that bill. And this speaks to the fact that this is a not-for-profit utility. It is a municipal utility, so it's not as though there are some shareholders someplace that we're just saying, hang on, you're not going to get your share benefit right now. It's during this time of the year, usage is equivalent to what we get paid, and sometimes when usage is more than what we have in cash in hand, they need to get help to pay that. Did I make that? Did I do that okay? Did you?
If
Did you
I
get
understand,
what that was?
basically, Fairport Electric, you know, we get the power from the Power Authority.
Mm-hmm.
Fairport Electric distributes it.
Mm-hmm.
The Power
They send you a bill.
Well, right, the Power Authority comes to Fairport Electric and is like, all right, pay now. And that's before we get our bill, our electric bill.
Correct.
So they have to pay before we pay them. So now they're in this situation where, since not just us, but everywhere is using more, you know.
It's costing more.
It's costing more, right. Where it's costing more, you have just that disparity then, because we haven't paid our bills to Fairport Electric at the moment. So this is a loan so that it's, at the end of the day, it's as close to apples, right, as we can get, because we'll set that term, and allow them to meet what they need to meet now.
For a limited window.
Right.
It's only from February 9th until March 31st.
Okay.
By the time we get to March 31st, this better all be paid back, right?
They told me it was like 60 days.
That they would pay you back within 60 days.
Yep.
So, Megan, did our summation, did it cover it? Was it clear? Did it meet the requirements?
This is really common. It's allowed. Interfund loans happen all the time. They just have to be repaid within a year by law.
But they're going to repay it
But they're
before.
going to repay it.
And they're going to give us interest.
Yeah, and we're in a position, it's February, March, it's not construction season. We have the ability to do so, and it'll save Fairport Electric time and money for not having to pay to go out and close on this loan as well.
Is that clear as mud for everybody?
Or I was just saying, that makes sense too, because I'm sure they'd have to go out and take a loan to pay that over, and I'm sure the interest rate on that would be even worse for them.
And closing costs.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So this keeps them positioned well, which is good for all of us then too.
So, does anyone have any questions now that we really hacked that apart?
No, I had the opportunity for Manager White to explain this all to me last week. So
Okay.
I was in on it, I had it walking in.
So while we're talking about the price of electric right now, it is highly recommended, because we have the ability now with Fairport Electric and we've had this ability before. If you are not on a budget billing plan, my household is. And I know in the past, the month that we moved in was January of 2015, during that 4-month window where it never got above 30 degrees. Our first bill in our house, because we were moving things in and the temperature dropped 10 degrees inside our house, was significant. So we use budget billing at my house, and I would recommend, Fairport Electric recommends, if you have the opportunity, switch over to it. It makes everything more even from month to month throughout the year, and instead of these big spikes in your payment, it tends to equalize everything over the year. And with that, if there are no other comments other than my commentary on budget billing, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That will be unanimous, and we can move on to some items that should move a little quicker than that. Can I have a motion by the village board to authorize the clerk treasurer to make the following budget amendments? H3140.2 fire equipment, $65,726, and on the opposition, H2680 insurance recoveries, the same amount of money going from insurance recoveries to be moved to fire equipment. A1420.4 village attorney, $5,000, and then from the same from the opposite budget, A8010.4 zoning contractual, the movement of that $5,000 to the village attorney account. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
By Banoski and second by Nazarian. Any questions? Since I explained that during that motion, do you have any questions about what that item is?
Just for, I'm assuming that's for the fire vehicle that had that unfortunate accident.
It was a long process, but that's the insurance recovery we got. We did get that in cash at the end of last week, so it's showing that revenue and then allowing us to set the budget to purchase the new vehicle, which we have procured already, so we're able to get them something new fairly quickly.
Just so, we have people that read through it are going to wonder what that is.
Yeah,
and if they had missed that's last meeting.
Yes.
Authorized buying a new vehicle.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That will be unanimous. That takes us to a motion by the village board to appoint Pat Rapp as chair of the Fairport Public Arts Committee through December 31st, 2026. Can I have a motion and a second for that?
So moved.
By trustee Briggs.
Second.
By trustee Banoski. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That'll be unanimous. Congratulations, Pat. I know she's already been serving as the chair for multiple years at the Public Arts Committee, and she's already kicked off this year prior to this appointment. So thank you for your service to the community. Item number 8 is a motion by the village board to accept the January 2026 financial statements for the Village of Fairport and the December 2025 financial statements for Fairport Municipal Commission. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
By trustee Banoski.
Second.
By trustee Wojcik. Any highlights from the village that we should be aware of?
Just in the general fund, we did have our annual workers' compensation premium payment, and just as a reminder, we are self-insured with a handful of other municipalities, and it's just as you're going into budget, it's a great group to be a part of. We paid this premium into the group, and based on our experience modification, we do get a significant portion of that back the subsequent year. And we always come to the board when we get that refund as to what to do with it, and often we put it in a workers' comp reserve. So should we ever have an experience modification that would make us more risky, which is like the risk that you get with a self-insured fund, we have that money set aside to help us weather that storm until we get back to a stable experience month. So it's just something as a reminder that we pay that every year, and it's just a group of municipalities together working through it.
Great. And I kind of shared with you the financial statements coming from FMC. It was about the fact that they were going to have to ask the village for that loan to just meet the bills until we start seeing everybody with their bills in February. Any questions from the board about either one of those? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That will be unanimous, which takes us to item number 9, a motion by the village board to authorize payment of the audited bills.
I have reviewed all bills, found things to be in order, and move that we authorize payment.
Okay. Go ahead.
I too have reviewed bills and agree with Adam and second. Oh, sorry.
I too have reviewed the bills and second.
Okay.
And were there any bills from Fisher Associates in there?
No.
Were there any composting numbers?
No.
Not yet. No, we didn't get an invoice for that. We didn't get one, actually. I think we're still waiting. Wow. We're still waiting on invoices, actually, even for gas, too, if I'm not mistaken. So.
That one came in late this afternoon, but
okay.
at some point we have to put a stop to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like at a certain point, we have to give you the authorization to go ahead. So, okay.
Any questions about the bills from anyone here on the board? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That will be unanimous, which takes us to a motion by the village board to amend the previously approved amount of $70,000 to pay health and dental insurance premiums for the month of February to $65,260.72. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
By trustee Wojtka,
Second.
by trustee Banowski. I don't see any dire questions from this group here. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That'll be unanimous, which takes us to number 11, which is a motion by the village board to authorize the clerk treasurer to pay health and dental insurance premiums for the month of March in an initial estimated amount not to exceed $70,000, subject to auditing and amending authorization by the village board at the regularly scheduled March meeting. Got that all in one breath. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
We'll give it to trustee Briggs and the second from trustee Wojtka. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then that will be unanimous, which takes us to announcements and committee reports. I'm going to start with trustee Briggs.
Oh, I just wanted to put out there that even though I'm not the official person appointed by the mayor, that I actually do look through all the bills and the vendors and everything every month and double check what's coming in and ask questions. So I do look and always have as to how the village is spending your money. Last month I went to the merchants meeting and made sure they got their request on very specific, what type of ice melt products they should be using on the new sidewalks. So I got that to FMC for that, or excuse me, the merchants for that. The 6x6 annual, yeah, that's coming up. It's going to be March 14th. That date's been confirmed. And for those of you that don't know it, 6x6 is the annual fundraiser for ROCO, the Rochester Contemporary Art Museum downtown. And their fundraiser not only keeps the lights on, but it also allows them to support emerging artists and have studio time, bring in guest speakers. So this is their annual fundraiser. And we will be holding it March 14th from 1 to 4 at Railroad Street Artworks. We normally do it at the library, but Railroad Street will allow us to let all the paintings dry overnight and store it as opposed to holding it in a different location.
Yeah.
So that's great. I was asked a while back to join by the Canal Days Committee. I was invited to join the curator part, it's a bunch of us that get together and we go through all the vendors and all the artists that are going to be coming in. And that's a great group of people, and they were very warm and welcomed me right into that. So we spent several hours on this past week looking through all the applications for Canal Days. Canal Days is the first weekend in June, and there's some great things coming. I was excited because we got a handful of new visual artists. Went to NICOM, and again, I appreciate that opportunity to go on to the state level and to network with colleagues across the state, and to have some really great discussions about affordability and housing and walkability and how each individual community is handling it and what their choices and focus are unique to their community. So this was, they condensed it and made a really heavy 2 days, but it was worth it. There were some great conversations, and I appreciate that opportunity. And lastly, the Parrington Food Cupboard is doing a food drive this week, and it's going to have a Valentine's Day theme. So again, maybe hot cocoa, warm things. I'm saying chocolate. They didn't say that, but maybe some treats or sweets in there, as well as personal items. And for the Parrington Food Cupboard, it's the library, Parrington Town Hall, and lots of the local churches participate in that. And that's me. Adam.
I think that's great, because I think, especially with that, sometimes, and even it happens to me too, where you think, oh, what is stuff they need? Well, don't forget, people want some fun stuff too.
That's what I thought. So, a little heart out there, throwing some cocoa and fun stuff this week.
Okay, so I was unable to make the tree board because I was not able to speak at the time. I'm kind of sick of it. Yeah, jeez. Yeah, but I do know Bill Mayer was elected chair and Patricia Foran secretary. So looking forward to that, and working on organizing a path for the next tree planting for Arbor Day, Earth Week. It was great, last year, doing those. I think it's fantastic. Definitely need trees where we plant it. So looking forward to the next step there. I'm going to put a plug out there for the OSED podcast. I don't know if you've heard of Fairport Forward. It's a great podcast, and the other thing that's great about it too is they're taking honestly, some of the things we're talking about tonight, but also some of the things because they came up during the DRI process, and they're talking about it, everything from housing to transportation to character, and how the DRI can continue to be. We could make use, knock on wood, we get it, can be leveraged for that. Obviously, it's cold. Please check in on your neighbors, especially folks who are maybe a little bit older. If you haven't seen them in a little bit, it's one of the great things about being in our community. If you haven't seen someone, just knock on the door real quick, make sure they don't need help with anything there. Have fun if you can, and just make sure you're. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not getting frostbitten or anything. So, that's all I got.
All right. I'm going to try and go quick. I want to thank everyone that made it the entirety of the way to the announcements portion of tonight's meeting for sticking with it. Appreciate your dedication. I'm going to also plug the Fairport Forward podcast from OSED. They talk about a lot of wonderful things, and it's really great. You should definitely take a listen. I also was able to attend the NICOM meeting this past week, and some of the most important things, there was also a legislative on the Hill Day that folks were able to participate in, and some of the things we were encouraged to talk to our legislators at the state level is creating dedicated source for water and sewer funding. Within the village now, we have a sewer fund. We don't maintain our own water. It's Monroe County Water Authority, but we would always like more funding for our sewers because, we got to. We're also still pushing for an increase in AIM funding because this is something that has not changed in the past 15 years for municipalities. There was an addition of unrestricted aid, it was temporary unrestricted aid, which was added, which could go away at any time. So we're trying to push for the AIM funding to increase so it allows municipalities to bridge that gap between revenue and what you have to spend. And it also helps alleviate the tax burden for residents instead of forcing municipalities into disinvesting in essential services. Also asked for an increase in CHIPS funding. I'm trying to go fast because I know we all want to go. The CHIPS funding was increased, but also the cost of materials for road repair and construction combined with inflation are outpacing all of this. It's outpacing the state's commitment to maintaining the infrastructure in municipalities. My favorite workshop was, well, there were two. There was a great one the first day for new officials, and how the big takeaway from that is how important it is for us to understand our local government structure and who has the ability to do what. That's super helpful. And my other favorite is back in my notes. There was one on smart growth, which was really closely connected to the DRI, and it was really great to talk to other communities that had implemented a DRI within their community, what they did, how they did it, how they determined, how they moved forward with the whole process. And near and dear to my composting heart was a presentation from Cornell Climate Stewards, which is run through the Cornell Cooperative Extension, which we have here in Rochester, and is a training opportunity for volunteers in New York State to learn about science and solutions to be a local climate steward for your community. It is a 12-week opportunity, and you get to complete a local stewardship project in your municipality at the end for your project, and then you get to be a part of that and bring more sustainability to your municipality. And that is all I have. Thank you so much for making it this far.
Go ahead, Sarah. I just want to thank the village workers who have been plowing us and helping us get through this. Listen, the second I leave Fairport, I know it. I'm not going to say other town names, but it is crystal clear when you leave the Barrington Fairport bound. So I am very grateful, and they're always so friendly. You walk by them, and they wave while they're working. I don't do that at work, so I mean, seriously, they're hi. The sidewalk plows, all that stuff. It's for those of us that are still trying to walk places, which Adam is better about than I am. But I'm super grateful for them doing their job as well as they do.
Thanks. I'll mention that Fairport Electric is installing new electric poles, and they are doing a bunch of work. They have been for multiple weeks now on High Street in that area. So watch out if you see those Fairport Electric trucks. They're putting new poles in, and it's been I know this started maybe before Christmas. They're still working over there on High Street, and they're slowly making their way down the road. I think school is out next week, so while it's snowy, please watch for kids out playing in the snow. I attended GRAPE, which I finally got so I can only remember two words. It's the Greater Rochester Area Partnership for the Elderly, and while I don't consider the people who I know who are above AARP range to be elderly, that's how they talk about it. And one of their very big topics was ageism and where it shows up in everybody's life. And birthday cards, by the way, are a huge ageism problem. But it was a great conference. There are speakers there from Lifespan. As I mentioned, village resident David Stites, Dr. David Stites, runs a program and is one of the backers of this particular panel event. He is a professor of geriatrics at Nazareth University. They're no longer just a college. I was at NICOM. I went to FMC. I think that's it. So thank you again. I'll second and third Heidi's comment. Thank you for everybody who is still watching this or who is still sitting in the room, because you are amazing that you made it this long. And our next village board, oh, by the way, thank you to our staff who has been here through this whole meeting. I know there are other places you'd rather be, but maybe not. You were with us. Okay, I was just thinking of a Buffalo Bills Marv Levy quote. Where would you rather be? Right here, right now. So our next village board work session is Monday, February 23rd, 2026 at 6 p.m. Our next regular village board meeting is Monday, March 9th. And then prepare yourselves, because March is budget meeting month. There are lots of budget meetings in March. I'm not sure if my schedule is accurate because I've changed it a bunch of times, but it looks like almost every Monday in March we're here talking about the budget. How about that? And with that, all meetings are held here at Village Hall, 31 South Main Street. Those budget meetings, along with the next few meetings, will be televised, just as they are this evening, and they're available on YouTube. And with that, I would ask for a motion of the village board to adjourn.
So moved.
By Trustee Whitcomb.
It's a little eager.
Second.
By Trustee Vanasky. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening. And thank you to all of our village employees for all of their work. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Especially this temperature.